Really long topic, but I'll try and keep it short and sweet. So, touching upon aspects. Today, my co-presenter is Dr. B.V. Kumar. This is an academic collaborative effort. I am Bhargav. I work at CISA Information Security. We are security consultants. And Dr. Kumar works for Cognizant Technology Services, which is a software development company. Basically, we are going to split this session into two mini sessions. First of all, I'll be talking about the payment card industry and application security. And then Dr. Kumar will be talking about the security implementation for the PCI industry using the new Java EE. So basically, we're going to touch upon the design aspects of applications for the PCI environment for PCI compliance, and few implementation requirements. Because of the paucity of time, we'll not be able to cover everything, so you can take your questions offhand as well afterwards. So first of all, what is the payment card industry, and what is payment card industry compliance? The payment card industry compliance was created for companies who store, process, or transmit cardholder information. When you say basic objective of the PCI standards is pretty simple. Protect cardholder information. Do not allow it to get leaked. Do not allow the disclosure, intentional or an unintentional disclosure of cardholder information. So any company which stores, processes, or transmits cardholder information needs to be compliant with the PCI standards. So who needs to be compliant with the PCI standards? We'll get to that a little bit later. We'll just give you a timeline here of the PCI landscape. First of all, this is the Security Standards Council. The Security Standards Council was created by 5 payment brands: Visa, MasterCard, Amex, JCB, and Discover. And they promulgated the PCI standards, which started off with the PCI 1.0 in the year 2004. In the year 2006, they made it PCI DSS version 1.1, which is what we're currently following. And apart from that, application security took a big leap when the payment application standards were created. I don't know how many of you have heard of PABP. How many of you have heard of Visa PABP standards? It's called the Payment Application Best Practices, which basically talks about an application which needs to be deployed in a PCI environment. The newer standard of the PABP is called the PADSS, which has been taken over by the Security Standards Council. So now it is an industry-wide initiative to promote secure payment applications. Any application that stores, processes, transmits, or even sometimes displays cardholder information. So this is just a brief evolution of the PCI standards, so to speak. Now this is basically a, This is a graphical representation of a very simple process flow of what really happens when you go into a merchant's establishment and use your card. So you are the card holder. You go to a merchant. The merchant takes your card and swipes it on his machine, right? So then the transaction moves to the acquiring bank. This is the bank the merchant is tied up with. The merchant's transactions are acquired by this bank. So this is the acquiring bank. At first, it's the acquiring bank. The acquiring bank then pushes it to the card payment brand. Let's say this card holder is having a Visa card. It pushes it to the card payment brand, which is Visa. Then the transaction moves to the issuing bank. This is the bank that issued the card holder's card. So it moves to the issuing bank, and then the issuing bank does a bunch of checks, basically checks out if this card is okay, if it actually is owned by the issuing bank, and then comes back to the card holder, and then the transaction is authorized, and that's how the debt trap begins. So apart from this, there are a little more complex entities which require to be PCI compliant. You can obviously understand that all of these entities, apart from the card holder, need to be PCI compliant. But there are some more entities as well. Let me add a little complexity for you. Here, there's an extra entity. Let us say this merchant has a BPO in Bangalore. That's where I come from. A BPO in Bangalore, which is taking calls on his behalf. So the BPO is actually it's accessing the merchant's cardholder information. So that is a service provider. So the BPO needs to get PCI compliant as well. Now this is another service provider. What happens is the acquiring banks seldom like to acquire transactions themselves. What they do is they outsource the transaction processing to someone known as a third-party processor. A third-party processor allows his network to be used for transmission of cardholder information. That is done by even the card payment brand as well as the issuing bank. So all these banks have third-party providers providing processing capabilities for them. So these guys need to get PCI compliant as well. But there's something else. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see application vendor in each of these areas? Just, it is a service provider or application vendor. Why does an application vendor need to get PCI compliant? Let us say the merchant is using a retail automation solution. Let us say company X designed a retail automation solution which it wants to sell to various merchants. Let's say A, B, C, D, E merchants. And it goes to the merchant and says, hey, here's my retail application. Do you want to buy it? He says, no, I cannot buy it. It is not PADSS certified. If it's not PADSS certified and I'm going in for PCI compliance, I won't pass the compliance because your application is not PADSS certified. So the retail automation solution, the company X goes in for PADSS certification for that product. Let's say the product is X and X product gets certified PADSS, and then it can be deployed in a PCI environment. Basically, the PADSS was created to support a PCI compliant environment. So any questions at this point? Yes?
So what you're showing is actually the flow of transactions.
Yeah, it's just...
The flow of funds would be like a different flow.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a basic flow, a very simple flow. I mean, there are much more complex flows as well, but just for your understanding, this is just for your understanding here. So this is basically an extension of the slide previous. So what does it take to get PCI compliant? Most clients we visited have a big problem. What really does it take? What really needs to get into a compliance process from their end in order to get compliant? First of all, identification of the flow of cardholder information. We spend around 30 to 40% of our time on assessment in determining a flow of cardholder information in the environment. For that, we need process flows. We need how does the application or the entity itself take in cardholder information and output cardholder information. So this basically can be determined by some flow of cardholder information that is done through process flows and business flows and things like that. Then, of course, PCI mandates security policies and procedures, which need to be documented, which is part of your standard ISMS process. Also, network and security implementation you require firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, all to be in place in order for you to get PCI compliant. Of course, the topic of today is also going to be discussed. We're going to be talking about this in greater depth. And of course, risk-based implementation for optimized security. Not all applications or not all entities carry the same amount of risk when you're implementing PCI. It depends on their exposure to cardholder information. It depends on how much cardholder data exposure they have while implementing their controls, because the controls need to be on a cost to benefit ratio as well. So what has an application got to do with PCI compliance? The application has got a lot to do with PCI compliance because